In this video I am going to show you how to create a game. We will create a snake game specifically in this video, but through that I am going to show you the basic concepts of game creation. For this game I will be using Python with Pygame, but you can try and use these concepts in any framework or language you want. So the first thing we will do for our game is create a game engine. Now when I say we need to create a game engine, I do not mean a game engine like Unity or Godot, but a simple game.py file which will keep track of our game. Through this file we will control our game. Now let's start coding our game. In the init function we will initialize the Pygame library and then we will create a window. You need to give width and height to the window. I can write the values directly here, but instead I will create a configuration file which will hold the values for me so that it is easy for me in the future to change the size of the window. And I also don't have to write these values manually everywhere. And then we can import these values to wherever we need them. Then we will create a clock object. Now you may be asking that why is that clock necessary? And the answer is that we will use this clock object to control the frame rate of our game using time. The next four variables are pretty obvious of what they does. The font object will be used to write the score and high score on the screen. The score variable will store the current score of the player, and the running and paused variables will be used to check if the game is running or paused. Now we will define the run function. This function will be responsible for starting our game. This function consists of our main game loop. Our main game loop is a loop that runs repeatedly until the game is on, and when this loop closes, then that ends our game. This main loop will consist of three different functions. First one will handle the input given by the player. We will call that function handle event. In the handle event function, we will look for any relevant input given by the player and then handle that input according to specific requirements of the game. Here when the player press the up arrow key, we will change the direction of the snake to upward, but we haven't defined the snake yet, so let's do that. In the snake.py file, we will import the Pygame library and our configuration file and add the size of the grid and import that. We will also import enum class to derive our direction class from it. In the direction class, we add the normals so that when they are multiplied with the coordinates of the snake, they change its direction. In the init function of the snake, we declare the necessary variables like current position of the snake and the direction toward which it is moving. Then we declare a function that will get the head position of the snake. We'll use this function to check if it is touching itself or touching the food. The turn function will be used to change the direction of the snake when a relevant key is pressed. Move function will move the snake on the screen. This function will also be used to grow the snake based on a boolean. This grow function will change that boolean, which will make the snake grow in the move function. The check collision function checks if the snake is colliding with itself. And the draw function draw the snake. Then we will import the direction and snake class to our game engine. In the init function of our game class, we will initialize an instance of the snake. Now that we have the snake, we will complete our handle event function. The next function in our main game loop will be the update function. This function will be used to update our game according to the latest changes that occurred due to a player's input. The snake will move, and if the head of the snake is touching the food, it will grow. Now we need to define a food class. In the food class, we need to include the width and height of the grid, so let's define that in our configuration file. There will also be a need for the snake and some colors, so let's define that. Now let's define the food class. In the init function of the food, we will give it a position on the map and a color. We will also create a function which will take the food location to a random point on the map so that every time the snake eats the food, it randomly changes its location. And also a draw function which will be included so that the food is drawn on the screen. After creating the food class, we'll import it and initiate an instance from it. And now we can use the food object in our game.py file. Sound is another thing that we need for our game, so we will create a sound class. In the init function of the sound class, we will define a init sound and a game over sound. Then we will create functions for both of the sounds which will be called whenever we want to play these sounds. In the game.py file, we will import this class and create an instance of it which will be used throughout the file. If the snake collides with itself, we will play the game over sound and call the game over function which we will define. In the game over function, we use another object for which class needs to be defined and imported. In the init function of the highScore class, we will give the path of a text file named highScore and load the highScore through the following defined function. We will also create an update function which will update the highScore. Now we will import the highScore class and create an object from it that will be used within the game.py file. After that, we will define the drawScore function which will be used to draw the current score and high score on the screen. Now in the main loop, after the update function comes the render function. This function will draw the updated version of things on the screen. In the definition of the render function, we will clear the screen, then we will draw everything onto the screen that needs to be drawn. And also in the main loop, we will tie the frame rate of the game to the speed of the snake. Then after the main loop finishes, we will quit the Pygame library. Now at last we will write our main function where our game will start. Oh, some error. Let's fix this error and rerun the game. And here it is.